space for conversation around women's health through the lens of naturopathic and Eastern medicine. I am Sandi Ross, and this is her Earth Medicine Podcast. This podcast is multi-leveled, episodes for patient education to graduate practitioner level. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you gain value from this episode. Hey guys, today I just wanted to do a little impromptu podcast episode on things to support gut health. So with gut health, we're normally talking about the stomach down to the intestines, but the gastrointestinal tract is actually anything from the mouth down to the anus. Now, I like to talk about beyond that and the things that can influence our gut health from the head phase. So there is something called the cephalic phase digestive response, and cephalic is Latin for head. So it means the smelling of the food as we prepare it, the sight of the food, and chewing of the food. So the cephalic phase digestive response has actually been shown to have a 40 to 60% digestive capacity or influence on your digestive health. And so what that means is if you're not taking the time to look at your food, smell your food, prepare your food, and really mindfully chew and enjoy your food, then you're potentially reducing your digestive ability by half. And I see this over and over again with like IBS and IBD patients that, they know stress is a huge trigger for them. And as soon as you're stressed, what actually happens physiologically in the body is our body goes into the fight and flight nervous system, so our sympathetic nervous system. And what happens there physiologically is we actually take blood away from our gut and it goes to our vital organs, so that if we had to fight away a tiger or run away from a tiger, we had the energy reserves there to do so. So blood goes from the gut to our muscles, to our brain, to our heart, and also our blood pressure increases. We start to breathe more shallow, our pupils dilate, and our body is ready to fight or to flight. So when we're in that nervous system state, we don't particularly need to be digesting our food. It's not a priority. So if you're kind of trying to digest your food in a state of stress, then it's not going to happen to the best ability because your body isn't in that nervous system state. It's in a state to fight or flight that tiger. And so we are the only animal on the planet that can actually think ourselves into that nervous system state, that fight and flight. So just, the to-do list or what have I got to do when I get home or cook dinner and the washing and, relationship problems and work, financial stress and all those things, all those constant thoughts, or just day-to-day life, even if everything's going well, caffeine, sugars, all these things can actually increase and put ourselves into that sympathetic nervous system response, which is our fight and flight, and that takes blood and our nervous system away from the gut. So to digest our food to our best ability, we actually want to be in the parasympathetic nervous system. So this is what we call the rest and the digest. And so this is the nervous system that's active when we're sleeping. And so this is why so much healing happens when we're sleeping, because we heal in the parasympathetic nervous system state. We don't heal when we're in that sympathetic. That's our survival mode. So parasympathetic nervous system is the blood is at our digestive organs. We shouldn't feel bloated because everything's able to break down. We shouldn't have loose stools, we shouldn't have constipation because there's blood flow there. Everything should pass nice and easily, and we should also have good reproductive function because we're not having an inhibition and shutting down our reproductive organs from the stress response. So ideally, we want to try and eat in a calm state. We want to eat mindfully. We want to chew our food. We want to look at our food, and we want to smell the flavors and taste all those flavors. So that's probably one of the biggest things I can suggest to all my patients with gut health problems is slow down, take the time to eat your food, and also to prepare it. And I know I'm one of 6 kids, and it was go at mealtime. It was sort of get in there, eat what you can, and then go and play and whatnot. So we kind of learn this habitually from a young age to scoff our food and not chew it and then, go and deal with our day. But it's something that has to be practiced day in, day out. And it's something that I know not even I do it at every meal won't happen, but it's good to be mindful when you can slow down with the meal. Another thing that I think is really really important is if you are feeling quite rushed and stressed when eating, is to just put your hands onto your belly and take 10 big belly breaths. What this does, it helps to bring the blood flow back. Diaphragmatic breath has been shown to actually stimulate that parasympathetic nervous system, your rest and digest. So that will help you immediately to digest your food. So making sure you're chewing, making sure you're breathing, being in that calm nervous system state as much as possible will really help. Another thing is don't eat if you're feeling emotional. We all know that as soon as we're stressed and our appetite is lost, it's because our blood is not there. So it's really important to listen to your gut. If you're feeling stressed and rushed and you have no appetite, don't force yourself to eat. And if you're feeling emotional and overwhelmed, you're probably better off to just have a warm drink, cup of tea, or maybe a bit of broth or something like that than you are to try and force yourself to eat, because your digestion has been switched off. That's what your body is physiologically saying. So listen to your body. There are things you can do to actually help stimulate your digestion if you find you have sluggish digestion. So digestive stimulants are things that are bitter and pungent and sour. So I love to tell patients to do a little bit of apple cider vinegar before a meal, and that actually gets your secretions going. It might just be 1 teaspoon about 5 minutes before you eat. If you can do it straight, that's great. If it's not good for the enamel of your teeth, or if you can't handle it straight, put it in a little bit of warm water and have that before your meal to get those gastric juices all going. Another thing you can do is a little bit of lemon or lime in warm water, or you can add that to your food too. So those flavors get those secretions going. Bitter foods are very good for getting your bile. So I love things like dandelion, the greens, the bitter greens. A lot of the greens have a bitter flavor too, so chewing on them with your meals can be really good for stimulating your gastric juices. And just making sure that you take your time to, add these things in before the main meal that has a lot of protein is really important too, because it's usually those heavier meals that are harder to digest because they require more energy. In Chinese medicine, we talk a lot about the spleen and the digestive fire, so I'm not going to go into that too much in this episode. All I'm going to say is if you are suffering from digestive problems, it is really good to be mindful of the temperature of the food you're eating. So I see a lot of young girls that are constantly having problems with periods or pains with their belly that are eating a predominantly raw and cold diet. So it might be yogurt and berries, or a smoothie for breakfast and then a salad for lunch, and then the dinner might be the only warm meal. So in Chinese medicine, that kind of puts out that digestive fire and the ability to digest, and it actually utilizes the energy from elsewhere in the body to try and break down the food. So the body likes more warmth than it likes cold, especially if you run more on the colder side, and a lot of women do. So men tend to handle a bit more of a raw and cold diet because they run a bit more heated than women. And this is just generalized, but this is kind of how we see it a lot in clinic. So be mindful that if your diet is predominantly raw and cold, to switch it up and see if that makes a difference to your digestion and your ability to break down your food. A few really basic supplements that I love just to help support digestion. Slippery elm is one that, I remember back in naturopathic college, it was one of the basic things we used to use for reflux or constipation or diarrhea. It has many more applications, but for constipation, you would add more water to it, so it helps with lubrication and getting into mucilage, so it coats from the mouth down to the anus, so it helps everything pass through easily. And for diarrhea, you would put it with a smaller amount of water because it's a fiber, so it helps to bulk up the stool. Slippery elm is in a lot of the gut supplements you'll see. It's a great fiber, and it's been used for many years to support the gut. So that's something you can try. And I like to do that about 1 teaspoon in water in the mornings as you wake up. And depending, obviously, if you've got loose or constipated stools, would depend on the water amount that you're adding to it. Another great little fibre is psyllium husk. So you can get these at health food shops. Usually you can even find them in your supermarkets now. But psyllium husk is a soluble fibre and it absorbs all the water around it. So you want to add this to a cup of water before you drink it. Otherwise it can absorb the water from your large intestine and bulk up the stool too much, which is good if you're having diarrhea. But if you're trying to help broom through the gut and sweep everything out, then you want to have it soak up the water from the cup that you're drinking, not from the bowel. And you'll find that this causes a nice big stool to pass through, and it's just like a nice broom sweeping through, helping fibers, which are amazing for feeding all the gut bacteria. Another great little thing, which you can get like in a liquid or a gel, but if you can, I always suggest grow it and just scrape it out of the plant, is aloe vera. So aloe vera is such a great little medicinal, easy to grow herb, food, whatever you want to call it. It's really rich in polysaccharides. So these are very good sugars basically that feed gut bacteria and are super healing for the gut. Aloe vera is also another one that's found in a lot of those gut supplements. So this is something that you can, buy a little plant and it grows super easy depending on where you live in the world. And all you need to do is snap off one of the aloe vera sticks, slice it open and scrape out the gel, and then you can mix that into a drink, or you can mix it if you are having smoothies. I always say if you're doing smoothies, keep them room temperature, don't put cold and raw things in them, and otherwise you can just mix it into a drink with your other supplements, and it's so healing for the gut. Now if you tend to have a weak or kind of sluggish bowel, there are definitely a few things you can do to help retrain your colon. So two common types of sluggish bowel we see is hypotonic or hypertonic. So the hypo, which is like a low tone, usually is due to poor nerve impulses and muscle contractions. So it's like a lazy bowel. And then the hypertonic is usually excessive bowel, basically spasming, and that can be due to stress. So we see that one a lot with the IBS picture. So exercises are really good to help with retraining the bowel and getting your bowels to move. If you go onto TED.com, there's actually some really good talks. There's one called Constipation Belly Exercises that you can check out. Now, another thing I really love is vagal nerve exercises. So gargling water can actually help to stimulate the vagal nerve, which is basically a cranial nerve that comes down and basically switches on all your digestive organs. And so it's a very important nerve to work on if we can, and it's super simple to actually stimulate. So gargling, so you basically gargle water, which helps to stimulate the nerve in the soft palate, and if you do that multiple times a day, that can help with poor vagal tone. And also singing has been shown to help with poor vagal tone as well as humming. So a couple of things there that are super easy to help with the vagal nerve, which have been associated with a sluggish colon. I'm also a big fan of enemas, but I won't go into that too much in this podcast episode. But if you have a sluggish colon and you have been prone to constipation for many years, there is probably a lot of bad bacteria brewing in your bowel that if you don't move the poo out, it's going to keep brewing and making you sicker. So sometimes using a coffee enema can be a really great tool to help just get everything out as you start the process of healing the gut. Magnesium is also an amazing supplement that you can take to help if you've got constipation in the gut. The different forms of magnesium do different things. So magnesium oxide is usually the one that helps to bring the water and draw the water to the bowel to help to make you go to the toilet. And so there are some supplements you can get with magnesium oxide. So that's kind of working like a laxative. But there are, magnesium citrate or chelate are good as well because they help to calm the nervous system and they're working on that nervous system response. So it depends on the driver as to what kind of magnesium you want to reach out for. And there are definitely products that you can get with combinations of the two together, or the three even forms of magnesium. Another thing you can do is the positioning of how you sit on the toilet. So you've probably heard of like a poo stool, or just getting something and popping it under your feet just to open up the bowel. So it's really important to try and squat, which is actually the proper anatomical position of the colon, and it helps for more easily evacuation. So try and prop up your knees if you can to help you go to the toilet. Obviously, if stress is a big thing, then reducing stress and, getting out of that fight and flight and back into the rest and digest is going to be game changer for you. So breath work can be really important to include. So yes, before your meals, but also maybe at night as well, including like a meditation before you go to bed. And if you can, if there's time and, you know, not children jumping all over you, then a meditation in the morning as well. That can be game changer. Getting you from fight and flight into the rest and digest can do so much for your gut health. So relaxation, you know, there's lots of apps out there you can get. I really love to recommend Insight Timer. It's free and you can pop on, you know, 5, 10, 15 minute, and then obviously increase the time and the duration of your meditation. There's also meditations on there for children. So, you know, you can do it with your little ones as well. And that's training them to do these things correctly. Another thing I just want to add in is make sure you're sitting down, you know, as a family and trying to have a meal together at least, you know, once a day if you can. Breakfast might not be warranted. It might be a really busy time. But if you are a family, not just an individual, it's really important to train your little ones as well as yourself to really slow down at mealtime. Sit with them, eat with them, discuss the day, do what we used to do back in the old days. You know, you see all the pictures of everyone, the European photos, they're all feasting, drinking wine and just sitting for hours having a great time. We don't do that anymore. We pop the, you know, meal in front of the kids, in front of the TV, and then we go off and do our things so we can have 10 minutes of peace and quiet where they eat and watch TV. And we're sort of, you know, forgetting that it's a time of connection, it's a time to discuss, and that's a time to digest our food as well. So hopefully you can try and implement a few of these tips, I guess, that I've suggested out of this podcast episode and find that they work for your gut health, because, you know, we know that the gut is so important for so many different things. And if you are having problems with your gut health, you need to address it because it will end up going systemic and affecting other areas long term. So hopefully you've enjoyed this little impromptu episode and you can implement some of the things I've suggested. Thank you for listening. I have been a practitioner of naturopathic and Chinese medicine for over a decade. I have a master's degree of health science and I am an academic lecturer at Australia's leading natural medicine college. I am available worldwide online for bookings. Simply go to sandyrosshealth.com.